Good afternoon. I am Michael Skoll. I'm the president of the Venezuelan American Association of the U.S., VAUS. We are pleased to be partnering with the Venezuelan American Chamber of Commerce of the U.S. for this second in our series on Venezuelan entrepreneurs around the world, which presents the bright side of the exodus from Venezuela. As we're saying now, Venezuela's loss is the world's gain. I would like to welcome all of you to today's conversation with two entrepreneurs in this diaspora, Mariela Briceño of Emprendedoras and Raul Romero of Yaquera, about their efforts and the businesses they have created. The discussion will be moderated by Jesus Bolivar of McKinsey & Company. A little bit about VAUS. The Venezuelan American Association has been promoting exchange between Venezuela and the US for over 85 years. During this ongoing crisis, VAUS has been diligent in fostering discussion to spark action. We thank you all for accompanying us on our quest for knowledge and for a better future for Venezuela. Now, since our program will conclude with a Q&A session, you may write questions at any time using the Q&A button, not the chat button, the Q&A button at the bottom of the page, and our moderator will present them. And now let me turn the program over to Leslie Simon, President of the Venezuelan American Chamber. Leslie?
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you to your organization, VAUS, and thank you to the whole team of VAUS who invited us to participate in this Zoom today. We really value this opportunity very much, because it's the opportunity to show the world that Venezuelans are more than sometimes we see on the TV, we read on the press, or listen in the radio. This is Venezuela. Businessmen, a large community of entrepreneurs, resilient men and women who proudly wear our national symbols. So it's our pleasure to be here. See Mariela once again, Raul and Jesus and all your team. Let me introduce Jesus. Jesus leads the Fuel platform, where they are building the next generation of solutions that help startups, corporate venture, and venture capital firms to achieve their goals. He is an aerospace engineer, entrepreneur, and economist with extensive experience in product development. Jesus has led numerous products from conception to launch, and products from conception to launch as startups in the fintech, work automations, and enterprise space. He can be found snowboarding with his kids in the winter and skateboarding the rest of the year. Thank you, Jesus. The microphone is yours.
Thanks so much for that intro. Very happy to be here with these amazing two founders that we're gonna have a good 20-minute conversation. I'm obviously from Venezuela. I currently am in Oakland, and I'm part of the diaspora. So let's start with doing some intros on our panelists. So Mariela Briceño, she's, hi Mariela. She's the founder and CEO of Viva Plus. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Viva Plus, and she's gonna talk to us about her new project. And we have, and again, I'm not gonna spoil what they're gonna talk about with intros. And we have Raul Romero, also a founder of Yaquera. That's a very Venezuelan name, Yaquera, which is a platform to help people. It's like a GoFundMe for other folks. So this could be a YouTube video. So for those who are listening right now, I know that some folks are watching this later on our YouTube channels, but for those who are here and our attendees, please ask questions and use this time to engage with us. And any question is valid as long as it's about entrepreneurship. So let's start with you, Mariela. Tell us, where in the world are you and what are you working on?
Hi, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you to the Venezuelan American Association for the invitation and the opportunity to present my project from Miami. I'm currently in Miami. I've been living here for almost 20 years. So I'm part of the diaspora that started a long time ago. And as you mentioned, I am founder of Viva Plus, which is a communication and marketing company, but the project that brings me here is Emprendedoras. Emprendedoras is a community of Venezuelan women entrepreneurs around the world. We give visibility, educate, support, and promote leadership and entrepreneurial skills among Venezuelan founders and entrepreneurs around the globe. And we start this with the pandemic, so just 2 years ago.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for that intro. And Raul, where in the world are you and what are you working on?
Well, right now I'm in Gambier, Ohio, which is a very unusual place where you would find, and I think in the census in terms of Venezuelans, I actually saw 0 Venezuelans in the last census that was conducted. But I can tell you, if I'm the only one here, I'm always carrying my flag, and will do so soon in graduation. But I'm the founder of Yaquera, which means gratitude in the Venezuelan indigenous language Warao, and it's a crowdfunding platform that gives people in Venezuela and soon in Latin America the opportunity to tell their stories and to receive 100% of the funds donated in their stories directly using e-wallets that allow them and give them the opportunity to then spend in local currency or use that vehicle to pay directly for goods and services. So we're changing how both humanitarian aid is distributed around the world and how generosity happens, giving people a platform, an opportunity to tell their stories and receive donations directly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to ask something that's very philosophical and sort of basic for those who are listening. Why go after, why be an entrepreneur? Why go after these very challenging problems? Why not just go work for a company and try to solve it, within the current structures that we have that are available to us? Mariela, perdón.
You know what, when you were asking the question, I was thinking in this motto, it's been with me for a long time, do something meaningful. And I found my way to do something meaningful in entrepreneurship. So that's my motto, the purpose, what I do is sometimes it's more difficult and it's challenging, but it's like the path you select. It's not better than other, it's just the way I decided to do it.
Yeah, and the reason I asked this question is because, particularly now with so many successful startups and all the stories that are heard, it seems like everyone's swimming in money and it's all glamorous, right? And I think people sometimes fail to realize that it is actually incredibly hard to start something from scratch, and it is emotionally draining, right? Some days you feel like you're on top of the world and you can do anything. Other days you feel like, what am I doing with my life? I could just get a job. All my friends are going out while I'm struggling with this. So what about you, Raul? Why do this hard thing of creating something from scratch?
I think I can feel that last part that you were mentioning, especially because I've dedicated 3 years of my time in school to really shape Yaquera and to create Yaquera from scratch. So Yaquera, for me, one of the reasons why we started this is that this was in the middle of Venezuela's crisis. We're talking 2018, 2019, when things were really, really hard. And when even my own family was struggling to make ends meet, when even my own family was struggling to find food, where I actually had the opportunity to go to the cafeteria, walk into the cafeteria and get a plate and get most of my needs fulfilled. And that was one of the main motivators, because people, not only they didn't have access to humanitarian aid, but they didn't have access to any sort of support or a platform where they could tell their stories. So why starting Yaquera? Well, why did I decide to start Yaquera? It's because we needed to give a place for those stories. We needed to give a place so that people could actually have their voices heard and receive 100% of those funds. So that's one of the reasons why of the story. And I actually have found an incredible team that has been able to support me in this journey. It hasn't been my story. Right now we have over 20 people in the team, and it's become our story. But I think the reason is because there's a big need in Venezuela, and because traditional institutions were not willing or looking to fulfill this need. And that's where we step in as a bridge, so that people can not just tell stories, but that funders, people around the world, can chip in and make donations that have a meaningful change in a person's life.
So it seems like there's an anchor in that mission, right? Something must be done, and with the current structure, it will not be solved, right? So therefore you have to create this new approach to solve it. So Mariela, tell us, how did you get started? One of the hardest things about, startups is getting started. Tell us the journey of how this thing took off.
Well, Actually, Emprendedora started with a very simple question. Who are the Venezuelan women entrepreneurs? Where are they? What are they doing? So we start telling stories in this area. We are like similar with Yaquera because we are telling the stories and we start telling stories. Where are these women? What are they doing? So we start encountering so many wonderful stories. We start with a account in Instagram with not a definitive plan at that moment. And when we start, and I know you are also doing kind of similar thing with your platform, with your program in YouTube. So we start to hook up with these stories, and 2.5 years later, we have told 500 plus stories of Venezuelan women entrepreneurs. And we have found so wonderful stories and the necessities they have and the need for a community that support them, that we decide we have much more at hand than just a community, just an account in Instagram. And actually, I would like to share just 3 stories with you so you have an idea, because that's something that always the people ask me. And as my sister, this is a project of 2 sisters, Mariela and Claudia Briceño. We are the co-founder of Emprendedoras. And these 3 stories I want to very briefly tell you are among more than 500, and it was very difficult to pick. So I just pick it randomly. So that's the story of Adriana. Adriana is a lawyer. She currently lives in Canada. She's a serial entrepreneur, and she's already opening international market for her food supplement business. And we have America. America was a Spanish teacher in a town in United States a couple of years ago. She started cooking from her kitchen at night, and now she is in over 70 supermarkets across the US with Salsas Don Vicente, I think is the name. And she's even in hot food, which is very difficult to get into. And also we have the story of Paola. I love the story of Paola because Paola was forced out of Venezuela at 21 years because she was part of the protest against the regime. So she came to the United States. She started working any kind of job. And while she was cleaning rooms in Orlando, she applied for a job in Disney as a seamstress. And now she owns an alterations and dry cleaning business in Boynton Beach. That's just 3 stories, and there are so many. So it's really amazing how the Venezuelan women reinvent themselves, how the resilience of the Venezuelan women, and also the need for a community. And in that, there is a misconception that the women in general don't support each other. And for us, that's not, it's completely untrue. They actually need the community and they asking for help. And that comes for, I mean, that's perfect for Yaquera as well, because I see a perfect alliance. And I told Raul over the weekend, we were talking and I said, we have to talk afterwards because we have to do something together.
That is awesome. I think if that happens, that's like a great achievement from this event. So I got to remind everyone, please ask questions so that we can get them. Remember, it's in the QA side. I want to stick with you, Mariela, for 1 second, because I want to understand. So in this platform that you're building, what's the model that you hope to pursue? So at the moment you're collecting stories, and you said that you're basically doing data gathering, right? You want to know where these women are, who are they? And just know, like, first assessment is where is your target client, right? In a way. And so it's very clear building this, but what problem do you aim to, like, now that you have that, all that information, what's next? Like, what problem are you aiming to solve, and how do you expect this to be sort of a sustainable model? If there's
absolutely. That's our aim, to be sustainable from the beginning, actually. As I told you, we start telling the stories and then we say, okay, we're telling the story. What do they need? What the women need? So we identify several problems we can solve and several needs we can attend. So we develop a model that is based in 4 areas: visibility, community, education, and support for growing. So we have been addressing mostly the first 2 pillars of our model, that is visibility and community. And now we are entering the phase of education and formation. This year, we partner with Cisneros, and we are gonna bring a group of women, a program called Focus Mujeres Emprendedoras. Focus Mujeres Emprendedoras is an entrepreneurial program that I actually did in 2019. And for us, it's a huge achievement to be named implementing partners for this year cohort. Wow. So this model we want to replicate. So we have identified a problem in the digital skills area. That's something that the women need, and there is a gap there. So we have developed already a program that is based in the European Union model, digital skill model. So we already have the program. We are finding and we are looking for partners to offer that. So what is the idea? Identify the problem, find the solution, and deliver to our community. That's what we are doing. And in the process, we are creating this community where the people meet and connect, because something we found is that the women say that what they need to grow is alliances. And they put alliances on top of capital, for instance. That surprised me. But that's
social capital.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And then just going back to our audience, if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking through a problem, these are the typical 2 questions that a VC or anyone will ask you, which Mariela and Raul have done a phenomenal job of asking. Going back to you, Raul, who is your target audience and what problem you're solving for? And one of the things that we're observing too in startup land a lot is this notion of building community as a way to achieve product market fit. Meaning, like, by engaging the community that you're trying to target, there's like a learning process of what their actual needs are. So I think the community-led approach lends itself to a lot of learning and a lot of like pivoting around like what's the actual goal. So back to you, Raul. So tell us, it's clear, or tell us exactly target customer and the thing you're trying to solve for. And I think you said it, but I just wanted you to be explicit about it.
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts there. There's the donors and the recipients, and sometimes there's intersections. The recipients who also become donors, but for our recipients are people first in Venezuela that have a need. This is people in small businesses, in education, in healthcare, nutrition, who have a need. It can either be a dream that they want to achieve or an immediate need. They want to. We have examples of, for instance, and I'm going to contextualize, of a woman who returned, a Venezuelan migrant who returned from Peru to Venezuela because her child was sick, and she started a small business selling cakes. And she was selling cakes in her community in el barrio Santa Cruz del Este in Caracas. And she was making cakes by hand. And she was able to tell her story. And she, between friends that supported her and people around the world who didn't even know her, she was able to raise $130 that for her were very meaningful, because now she did not have to make cakes by hand, but she actually had a mixer that she could make cakes with and make 3 times as many cakes. So people in Venezuela who have need or dreams in these 4 different categories, in these 4 different areas. And then for the donors, we have 3 different segments. People who have a connection to a recipient. So that one is really clear. It's really people who get contacted and who have a place where they can actually chip in and make donations for their family member or their friend who's raising funds. And then we have Venezuelans in the diaspora or Venezuelans in Venezuela who know the story but don't know the individuals, who have a connection to Venezuela but don't know the individuals. So we've gotten donations actually from over 10 different countries in the world. We've actually gotten donations from Australia, migrants with Venezuelan diaspora, supporting stories that they see in social media, stories that go viral because they feel compelled to donate, and they can find in Yaquera a place that is safe and where the stories are actually vetted, and they know for a fact that 100% of the funds are going to arrive to the people who are telling the stories. And then the third segment that we have is people that don't have a connection to Venezuela, that don't have a connection to the person raising the funds, but who actually feel as part of a greater community, and they can where they can actually donate and have a direct impact that no longer seems like this big problem to solve. It no longer is the Venezuelan crisis. It no longer is, let's say, an earthquake in Haiti. In this case, it's an immediate need of an immediate problem of a person that they can solve and they can see the impact in. And for that, we've developed features like the Donor Hub, where people can actually see the portfolio of the campaigns they've supported and sort of the comments they left, and where they soon see the impact the updates and the impact that they've had. So for these three different communities and for the recipients, we're creating a platform that brings them together, and where recipients in Venezuela don't only have to rely on their immediate social networks and can actually access a community that is bigger than that, and a community that is interested in generosity across borders.
So it sounds like the value added from what you're building is, again, please correct me if I'm mistaken, from what I've heard, is the vetting process, meaning like in this marketplace of donors and recipients, the donors sort of trust Yaquera to have stories and folks that are actually true and that have their need. Talk us through those challenges of knowing, because if you get hundreds of people, like how are you managing that vetting process? And is it true that that is a value added?
Yeah, our value added, I would say, is verification. That 100% of the funds go directly to people, and that we also provide accessibility in payments so that the recipients can actually get the payments in a way that they can spend locally without any issue. So,
sorry, I just have to say it again. Vetting and then payments is the second one.
Vetting and payments. The fact that we not just that are not taking a cut, but that people actually can go and the money is very liquid, that they can go into a store, to a supermarket, and actually purchase the things that they need, or to a pharmacy, or exchange it into local currency. So going back to the process of vetting, we conduct that KYC process where we're actually confirming that the person is real, that the person actually has an identity, that we can verify that identity with access to several databases. And not only that, but we're also verifying the need. So let's say you're a person in Venezuela who has a problem and has gone to the doctor. You get the doctor's note, you get different documents, and we're able to verify the authenticity of these documents, and both the authenticity of these documents and that the person is actually a real person who has this need. So through this multi-step process, we're able to make sure that the platforms that the stories that actually get on the platform are real, and provide that security to donors who might not know this individual, but who can support and see their impact in one story.
How did you know that these were the two things that you had to focus on? Like, why go after vetting and payments? And this is, again, when the reason I ask for this, when you're in a startup, you have a certain amount of energy to do, like very little energy to do many, many things, right? And so choosing what to focus on can make or break you at the beginning. So how did you decide to focus on those two value added?
I think for the point of vetting and security, I think one of the issues and why we had to focus on that is because in Venezuela, there's been a lot of corruption, right? Historically, there's been a lot of corruption that has eroded the trust between different individuals, right? There's an erosion of trust in society. And that's one of the issues why, even for the local Venezuelan population, we had to address this. And for donors, international donors, they don't have the context that we might see. We might see a story and detect different things that might be, but that might not be consistent, that might not be, and you could see that if you're Venezuelan, if you have the context and if you understand how things work. But if you're a donor, an international donor, you want to have that safety and that vetting process.
So this is very much based on your experience in Venezuela, right? So it was based on what you lived through. It's not like you interviewed people, or right?
Well, we did do user research. We did user interviews. We kept on having conversations with people who had donated to GoFundMe campaigns, people who didn't have any interaction with the sort of products, and with the three different sort of like donors that we had in mind, the three different segments. And we kept on having different user interviews on showing different products and A/B testing what created a greater sense of security and a greater sense of safety. So A/B testing and continuous user interviews, so we're able to deliver products that people actually like and that people will actually use.
Yeah, so I think your story is it's cool, because most people say, oh, you shouldn't do that, other someone else is doing it, right? You got GoFundMe, but as long as you focus on like a value prop that's differentiated, then you're more likely to be successful. So Mariela, let's turn to you, and so we have two questions from the audience, and they're related to, I'll just read them. Is there any difference between starting as an entrepreneur now, after the pandemic, than starting before the pandemic? Any tips that we should have in mind? And to this, I'll add this notion of, did COVID have an impact on why you started this, Mariela?
Actually, it coincides. We were born in January 2019. So we were born 2020, sorry. So actually we were born almost with the pandemic. And for us, it was a two-side story, because in one way, we were already digital and we were already prepared, but the pandemic boosted us in the global side of our purpose, because we wanted to become a global community. So starting during the pandemic helped us achieving that, because everything was going virtual. So it actually helps us in a way, and starting digitally, we will do it anyway, but I think it helps in a way. And regarding the question from the audience, I can tell you that from our experience in Emprendedoras, many women that lost their jobs during the pandemic, they start with a business out of necessity, and also out of they saw an opportunity. There was the moment to do it. And of course, it's been very hard for many women, because especially the pandemic hit harder on small businesses and minority and women-owned small businesses. So the gap has widened, and we know that. And that's why organizations like ours are so important at this moment. So I think at this moment, if you are starting you have a business idea, and after the pandemic has passed, you know that you have to go digital. You know that you need that digital skills from the beginning. It's maybe in the past you won't consider that at the beginning, but now you have to after the pandemic. So I think that's a great lesson we all had to learn.
Yeah. Raul, same question. I could read it again if you want to.
No, I think in terms of the pandemic and how that affected us, it actually, benefited us a lot, because we started and we have people who are working from 3 different continents for this project. So we have a hub in Manchester. We have 6 different people who are actually working from Manchester in the UK, from the University of Manchester, and we started recruiting internationally. We have a few people working from Venezuela, a few people working from Colombia. So we have different hubs around the world, and a hub here in the United States of people who are working together to deliver in Yaquera. So for us, in terms of recruiting, in terms of extending our impact, it was significantly easier to start with the mindset that we didn't all have to be in the same physical place to be able to deliver a product in Venezuela. So we initially were thinking, okay, how do we travel to Venezuela? How do we verify? And we realized that people had the tools to do that, and that we didn't necessarily have to have a physical infrastructure, but just having systems so we could carry out things like verification, that we could carry out things like sharing the platform so that people see it and can tell their stories, or donors can do the same. So we went from sort of like thinking of this as a physical space to really thinking as a platform where collaborators, donors, and recipients are all spread around the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, we could have survivor's bias, right? Because we have two companies who survived COVID, but it is actually true that for entrepreneurs, crises are moments of opportunities, right? And so any crisis it's a moment to reinvent things, and certainly leveraging the digitization of the world has been a silver lining for COVID. So there's a bunch of questions here. I'm going to try to resume it in one. How did you get funding for your startup? If you did, is one question. Do you need funding to get started? I think it's something that people always ask, right? And sometimes if I don't have money, can I get started? So that's one. And then the second one is talk through like agile strategies in your products and improvement over time. Mariela.
Well, in our case, we chose bootstrapping from the beginning. We are self-funded. We put a lot of work, hours of work, but since the beginning, we decided that we wanted to be sustainable, even though we also chose to be a not-for-profit organization. You have to be a sustainable organization, so you don't depend on grants and on external funding. And with that in mind, early on, we start developing sources of revenue. And that's an advice I will give anyone, that while you figure out your model, if you can have sources of revenue so you can invest and you can pay with what you earn from the beginning. I mean, it has two sides, but because when you chose bootstrapping, you are more constrained because you don't have enough money, and maybe the pace of growth is gonna be slower. So it's a decision you have to make, probably. But I'm sure I think you can start. Even though you don't have the capital, you can start your business with help from your friends and family. Start small, pivot, validate everything. Don't assume anything. Don't invest a lot in your loving idea because you are sure it's great, and you put all your money there and then it wasn't that good. So you have to validate before investing. And that's the way I learned to do it. I didn't knew that before, but at this moment I can tell it has paid for us in Emprendedoras doing this way. Moving forward, we need the funding now, but now we are more clear on what we are going to do. So now we are ready to go out and find that money that will boost us and accelerate our growth.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is be hypothesis driven and then test those hypotheses, right?
Exactly.
And I think also something else that I got from what you said is like you need money in like at a certain stage you perhaps will need money to scale, but you don't necessarily need money to get started, right? And to validate ideas and to interview folks.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Raul?
Yeah, I think echoing a lot of what Mariela says, I think it's really, really well stated that we also started bootstrapping. We also started relying on our own funds and relying on our advisory board of people who joined us in the cause and who support the things that we're doing at Yaquera. We've been a really agile organization from the start, because we've been delivering in 2-week sprints, where we're always not just seeking to validate a hypothesis, but also delivering with confidence after validating those hypotheses, and really seeking to apply the same software development process to that is standard in the industry, agile development processes in Yaquera. So that's one of the things. And then in terms of funding, yes, this year we're expanding to Latin America. There are many other countries who realize that the tools that we had built for Venezuela are not just exclusive to Venezuela, that there are people in Argentina, there are people in Chile, there are people in other parts of the region in Latin America that have a similar set of needs and that might not need humanitarian aid, but need generosity, and the same platform that we've built for that purpose in Venezuela can extend beyond Venezuela. So that's one of the reasons, yes, that we're seeking funds, but we've been able to be very lean and really focusing on spending on the things that matter, on our people and the capacities that we really need as we keep on scaling, and not taking a waterfall mindset where we already know the answer and we're going to build something from the beginning already having the answers, but always encountering problems and obstacles that people are having with the platform and delivering with those, and also making our teams and the things we do more scalable as the time comes. So just to summarize this, yes, we've been able to be agile. We've been able to match the standards of the industry and really deliver with software. And then the second part is that now that we've proven a model and a fit in Venezuela, and that we're seeking to expand beyond Venezuela, that's a part where raising capital is going to be very important.
Yeah, and we see this across, again, I call startup land, just the ecosystem, right? That there's this notion of you can bootstrap while you're testing product market fit as much as possible. And then once you have clear evidence that there's product market fit, then one, the likelihood of being able to raise is higher, because you can not only bring a great story, and you as a founder should be in general, I tend to be very great storytellers, but you can also bring to bear some data that backs up this story, right? And so, and going back to this notion of racing and storytelling, how did you convince the people around you? Like, how was that process? I mean, because in a way, when you're recruiting someone to join you in the journey, you are raising capital. Like in a way, when someone comes and says, okay, yeah, I'll be crazy enough to like go on this journey with you that is very uncertain, that it's highly likely to fail. How did you go about doing that? And sort of, there's other people who say, by the way, that creating a startup is creating a movement, right? It's very much like about being able to rally folks around an idea. So Mariela, how was that process for you? And any tips for us?
You know what, I was thinking about what Raul was saying about the agility of the model he started, and it came to me. It's not related with your question, but I think it's necessary for me to say that's a big difference between women and men, that women are very perfectionist. And the perfectionism is against progress sometimes. So we have this motto that is progress before perfection. And I learned that in Focus, in el programa Focus that I did in 2019. And it's so true for women that perfectionism sometimes doesn't allow you to advance your ideas. And I will advise anyone hearing me that let it go a little bit, the perfectionism, and being agile in that way. And I love the new generations like Raul, because they are very, how will I say, osados, like.
Yeah, they have guts.
Guts. They have a lot of guts, you know?
I think what you mean is like speed is a feature of a startup. Like speed, and going fast, is what's going to allow you to make things happen, right?
Yeah, and
trying to make
coming back to the question, because I don't want to leave it like that. The thing that happened with the emprendedores is that people fell in love with the stories, and you are a storyteller and you know that, and that helped us a lot. And also the approach of us is very, very personal. So we talk with the women. We are in the phone, in Instagram, email, LinkedIn, across many platforms available for them. But the women in our community are the protagonists of our community. And in that way, they have helped us grow. We grow event by event. We grow story by story. So each time we tell a story, people engage with the story, and it helps us grow. So it's like a beautiful circle in a way. And I guess that's part of what it's been going on with Emprendedoras and the people around us that's been supporting us from the beginning. It's the power of the stories, I guess.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Appreciate that. What about you? So storytelling is a big topic, right? Being able to tell the story and like craft it in a way that people understand what you're trying to get to.
And authenticity, sorry to interrupt, and authenticity, because people can tell when you are being authentic. I'm sure people can tell, unless you pay a lot of money in wonderful campaigns.
Yeah, but at the authenticity point, I think goes back to like the thing that I wanted to summarize, which is like have a story, like craft a story, have a clear target audience and a problem that you're trying to solve. And I think that authenticity comes from like the combination of those three things, right? When it's real, like there's a person behind it. So how was it for you, Raul, like recruiting folks and sort of creating this momentum towards doing something?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I did was I called for a meeting at school. I sent an email to everyone in my school to say, hey, if you want to have an impact in Venezuela, if you're looking at what's happening in the country and you want to have an impact, and we had a meeting, and then we started recruiting beyond that with the pandemic. One of my closest friends from high school had actually done a startup before on VR and AR, and although those skills at the beginning weren't initially transferable, the AR, VR, he had an experience building a business, and he had experience creating the business from scratch and developing a lot of code for it, developing the technology was necessary. So I recruited him. And then after that, actually at the beginning, Twitter was our biggest recruiting tool. We sent out a tweet saying, we're looking for developers. We're looking for Venezuelan developers who want to join the team. And the first 2 applications and the only 2 applications that we had at the beginning, there were 2 people that joined the team. And
From
now,
wow.
yeah, and Twitter suela, as we call it. But now we've gotten to a point where whenever we want to recruit people, the last job that we were recruiting for, we received over 110 applications for 1 spot that we had in our marketing team. So as you keep on building, the amount of people that believe in your capacity to deliver towards the future increases. And once you prove that you're not just a story, once you prove that you're actually building something, more people feel inspired to have an impact in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the thread that I've seen between both of you is this notion that you're building in public. Because if you went out to Twitter, you basically said, hey, everyone, I'm building this, I'm doing this is happening, right? And so there's a certain advantage of the strategy to build in public. And I think this goes back to what you were saying, Mariela, that people tend to have this notion of like, I'm going to hold it close to my chest. I'm going to make this beautiful thing before I show it to anyone. I'm going to spend a bunch of time before I show it, right? Whereas the building in public approach is very much like, look, here's what I see, here's what I'm doing, and here's what it is, right? Without like, it's imperfect. It's not the like the end vision, but you could see what it is now. And so there's definitely been a lot of founders who've leveraged Twitter and social media to sort of build in public. All right, let's move on to advice. Like if you were to tell yourself one thing, and only one, you could only say one thing that you wish you'd known when you started. Like if you could go back in time and, go and say, be careful with this, whatever it may be, just one thing. Mariela.
I know, give it to Raul first. I have to think this one, really.
Raul, do you have this one thing you wish you'd known? Or something that surprised you, something that you did not expect?
Yeah, I think is thinking about product. And this sounds a little bit more abstract, but I am coming initially from the social sciences, right? I'm a international studies major, Chinese minor, right? Learning Chinese and international relations at school. That didn't have to do that much with entrepreneurship. And I took a course at the end of my freshman year on entrepreneurship and business. But at the beginning of Yaquera, I was seeing this more on like the traditional and like the conventional thinking of, whoa, this is a service project. And we might go to Venezuela and, try to find a different way to do the same thing that has been done before. Whereas after the pandemic, I started preparing on product management. I actually worked for eBay last summer on product management, and like learning a lot, learning from people who were in the industry, learning from mentors, and learning from courses, and doing a lot of things that were outside of my initial comfort zone is what has allowed me and has allowed Yaquera to push forward. So I would say focus on product and think outside of the box. And I know this is cliche. Everyone says think outside the box, and I know it is super cliche, but I'll say it one more time. Because we went from thinking about this as a sort of like a volunteering international and maybe visiting Venezuela to thinking about, okay, how do we make a product that's scalable, and that mindset, that product mindset, is what's allowed us to push forward and to see how we can solve each one of the needs on features that we have on the site. So focus on product and think outside of the box.
Okay, Maria, do you have it? I can ask a different.
No. The thing is, where you was asking was something that I should like to have known at the beginning, and I have this problem in a way that is mine, that is delegate, and it's been with me always, and it happens to a lot of women as well. And yes, I wish at the beginning I delegate more, so I will have concentrate more in strategic things and not in day-to-day work, because that way maybe I will have progress more faster. But anyway, it's a work in progress. We're still learning, and my advice in general, I consider planning key. Strategic planning is key for me. all my life I've been very strategic, and I firmly believe that failing to plan is planning to fail. I think that's key. And also what I already said, don't assume anything and validate everything. And that helps a lot. That will advise everyone. And coming back to the delegate and forming team, that's also a very important area. The capacity to forming the teams, and not just the forming the teams, but also letting go people, which is very hard. And that's something in my life I had learned, that sometimes you form a team and you work with the team and it's perfect, but it comes a moment when you need different expertise and you need another kind of team, and letting go that team is super hard. But maybe you are stuck because you are with a team that it doesn't have the expertise you need at the moment. So that I will say you have to be very aware of that when you are the CEO of your company.
Learning, and team formation and planning. That's awesome. All right, let's try to get some from the audience. So do you think there is a gap between being or a difference between being a social entrepreneur to a traditional entrepreneur? Mariela.
Yes, there is, although I think nowadays you see more mixed models, and I think we're pivoting towards that. Business with purpose, with business with intention, with impact, and the customer is looking for that as well. So I think that's changing. It's different, of course it is, but I think that it's not gonna be the same as business as usual for many corporations.
Yeah. How about you, Raul? Do you see a difference between being a social entrepreneur versus a traditional entrepreneur?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, entrepreneurs are building solutions for problems that people have. But what I do think is really important about social entrepreneurs is that you keep having the reason why you're building always in front of you. You're seeing the impact. And Mariela probably sees it whenever she finishes up a workshop or whenever she collects a story from a person. In our case, it's very similar, right? Whenever a person is able to withdraw funds from their campaign because they were able to raise hundreds of dollars to meet a need that they had, is that sometimes the impact that you're having always becomes evident to you, and it keeps the teams motivated. So I think that that's one part, because there are so many businesses, and I do believe that whenever you're creating a product that is meeting someone's need, you're contributing to change and positive change. But you know, it's really easy for all startups to say, "Hey, we're changing the world," and I think everyone does, and everyone in the Bay Area says, "Hey, you know, we're building this new CRM cloud-based platform that changes the world." And you know, for us, it's more clear, it's evident. And each of the stories that are getting funds in Yaquera make us motivated to keep moving forward and keep a lot of people interested in joining the team and joining the efforts that we're carrying forward.
Nice. Solving problems for people. All right. Let's see another one. What are the qualities you look for in a business partner? So I'm guessing, like, framing the question, like how did you choose your co-founder, if you have one?
Well, in our case, we are sisters, and we came. But the beautiful thing of our partnership, my sister and me, is that we came from different areas, and we have different strengths. So I guess that's the important part, that you combine the strengths, and maybe one cover the other, lack of strength. You know what I mean? And Claudia came from supporting and been working with the diaspora in Uruguay. She lived in Uruguay. She formed a foundation in Uruguay to support the diaspora. And I came more from the entrepreneurship area. I have my company, my marketing company. So we both were motivated to support women. We came from different areas, and I think the combination was perfect for us, for our company.
How about you, Raul? How do you choose your co-founder, if you have one?
Yeah, there's two parts. One, I think what Mariela said in terms of complementary skills is super important. And then the second point is the ability to question and to question the things that you're saying in a way that is constructive and that leads to progress in what you're building. I think there's a risk for a lot of startups to have, especially if you're a founder who's very inspired in what you're building, to have complacency, right? To hire people who are complacent, who say yes to whatever you want to do. When in reality, the key to making something successful is having people who are questioning you and becoming a leader who's very open to that and who's willing to admit that they're wrong. And I'm wrong a lot of the times, and I'm willing to accept that I'm wrong. And if someone has a better strategy within the team to drive something forward, and I think we'll drive it together and we'll work together to drive that forward. So I think it's the key is complementary skills, questioning, always questioning what you do. And also not just for co-founders, but also and business partners, but also to keep on hiring people is having a process where you're always raising the bar. So always thinking, how is the next person that I'm hiring better at what they do than everyone else that we have around? How are we focusing on how can this person add value that is unique and that it's just not solving a temporary need that we have, but that is good and can be flexible in the needs that we have as a company. So I think those have been the three principles for bringing people to Yaquera. But reflecting back on the first thing that I said is always attacking complacency, always having a team that is not complacent and that is always willing to push things forward and to question you.
Thank you. All right, Mariela, this question is for you and comes from Alejandra Churi. Hopefully I said it okay. I didn't butcher your name. Ben Emprendedores wants to create a community of Venezuelan women around the world. How do you address the needs of specific businesses? I imagine your community has entrepreneurs from different industries and backgrounds with different regulations.
Yeah, we have a process when the people join Emprendedoras. You can join in different levels. If you want to be featured in Emprendedoras, you have to fill a survey, and that survey let me know your needs, your area, your expertise, and we have a very one-on-one approach, and we are super open. So if you want to partner with us or you want to present an idea for us, we are there. You can write to us at info@emprendedoras.com. And we are always open to receive suggestion or a person that needs something. We are also, at this moment, we are working in what we call a referral program. And the referral program, what we aim is that people that need help, it's gonna be matched with the people or organizations that support entrepreneurs. And you don't have to be a woman or a Venezuelan to be part of that circle of referral. If you offer services, product or services for entrepreneurs, you can be part of our circle. And then the idea is to make this match and to help you with the exact resources that you're looking for. So for both ends, we are helping. And that's something we are building right now.
That's awesome. All right, so we are gearing towards the end of our conversation. We have about 7 minutes left, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you so much for all the questions that you've submitted. If you have more, please. Oh, wow, we have a very long one that I need to read before I can say it. So thank you for the questions. Let's talk about your experience, right? You're obviously not in Venezuela. You're in a different country. How has it been different, or do you think has it been the same? Being a Venezuelan entrepreneur in the environment that you're in, like, has it been, the good and the bad, I would say, from being a Venezuelan entrepreneur abroad? Raul.
First of all, I think it's one of the good things is that it's allowed us to really focus on the value that we're adding. And we don't necessarily, and understanding that we don't necessarily have to be in the same place, or that we don't necessarily have to be in Venezuela, and that we can leverage a lot of the resources that we would have, that we have outside of Venezuela. So I don't think, and resources, I mean connections to people who are helping, who are giving us advice. If I didn't have the experience of coming for an education here in the US and meeting a lot of people who've been really helpful in finding the answers to a lot of questions, meeting mentors, that part has been easier. And that has allowed us to deliver value. And then in the second part on the bad is that sometimes the country keeps changing. Caracas and Venezuela in general keep changing. And something that we always need to think about is, because we're building products for Venezuela, is always updating our priors on the reality of Venezuela. So it's not necessarily bad. You can talk to people who are living there, who are part of the team, but always updating your priors is something that you need to do, because Venezuela today is not the same Venezuela of 2018, 2017, 2016, and it's always changing. So that's something that we need to be mindful of, is like, how do we keep updating priors and understanding that.
Thank you. Maria, the question was, how does being a Venezuelan abroad shaped your experience as an entrepreneur? The good and the bad.
For me, and I'm sure I can talk for many of the women in my community, it's a completely different story than from Raul. And I think in that case, it's generational. It's also because he is in an American university. He already developed a circle of support, mentorship, and he knows the environment. But when you came to a different country at a certain age and you have to start, if starting a business is difficult, starting a business in a different country with a different language is much more harder. And that's something that we are attending in Emprendedoras. It's part of a reason of being, actually, because we found that being an entrepreneur is difficult. Being an entrepreneur in a different country is more difficult. And also, if you have the diaspora stigma, depending on the country you are, it's also another hurdle you have to pass. So that make it more difficult, and especially because you are out of your comfort zone, and that is very challenging for many people. We have found that in many meetings with our community, that they say, for me, it's difficult to relate with the local people. I have the language barrier. I have the accent, the problem with the accent, because I have an accent and you have to overcome it. You have to do it. You have to do the job, but there's a lot of people super self-aware and they cannot do it. So there are a lot of challenges, and that's why we are doing what we are doing as well.
Well, thank you so much. And, as Venezuelans in the diaspora, we tend to be very sharp and on time, and we are on time. And so thank you so much, Raul and Mariela, for this candid conversation. By the way, my name is Jesus Bolivar. You can find me on Chubeto on Twitter. I talk entrepreneurship all day long. I hope to continue the conversation with Raul and Mariela offline and online, and the best to you in your projects. So I give it off the mic back to Ambassador Mike Salk.
To me. Well, this has been most enlightening. I want to thank Mariela, Raul, and Jesus. This is one more demonstration of what Venezuelans are giving to the world. It'll take another 4 webinars to figure out what this will mean for the Venezuela of the future, the very different Venezuela of the future. Thanks also to our partner, the Venezuelan American Chamber, and to our hardworking VAUS team for making this event possible. Lina Delgado, Linda Calvet, and Laurie Dominguez. VAUS and the Chamber are each working on future events, and we will keep you posted. If you are not already a member and are interested in joining one or both of our organizations, make it both. Please contact our teams via today's invitation. Your memberships are what make our work possible. Thank you again for all of you for participating. We look forward to meeting with you again soon. And now we conclude earlier than on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.